I sat in a meeting once where I was an agency person. One of our clients came in, the CEO, one of our clients came into the room and he said, "You people are not doing your jobs." Literally the first thing he said. It's like, oh gosh, one of these guys. And he said, "How do I know that? Because not enough people complain about you." And it's like, think about it for a second. But it's like, if you're not pushing the ball far enough, if you're not failing, like if you don't have, I used to tell my team at Mastercard, the people who helped regionally run media, I had one exercise at the end of the year of like, tell me the biggest failure you had of the year. It's really hard for people, but it's like, there's a context of like, if you're not failing, you're not pushing the envelope hard enough.
Welcome to 99 Humans. My name is Jeff Lakusta, curious coach and Wall Street Journal best-selling author, striving to understand how little things generate big impact.
And I'm Nadia, Carta, tech executive and lifestyle coach with a mission to transform lives and corporations by kindling hearts to generate a zeal for life.
Each week, we investigate stories about the human side of leadership to re-energize your spirit and help you become a stronger leader.
Because the reality is that leadership is messy, goofy, challenging, but always human.
Thanks for spending time with us today. Let's dive in.
Great. Well, thank you for being with us today.
Thank you.
We are extremely interested in hearing some of your story. You come with a high expectation because you've been recommended by one of our humans. So how about we start from, what are you up today, Ben? What is keeping you busy?
Yeah, it's funny because now I've kind of pivoted since November of 21. I've pivoted into my own business, right? I had big grown up corporate jobs at ad agencies and for marketers for 40 years. And in November of 21, I finally pulled the trigger after a couple of years of planning and opened up my own media consultancy. So now it's a little bit of like everything, right? So it's the regular like work. I have to constantly be selling. There's always things that I never did before. 2 days ago, I had a client who, I'm a small business. I have, barely 3 people, me and 2 people who help me out on the side. And I had a client who wanted to do an info security check. It's like, oh my gosh. But it's like going through the interview. It's like, you need an IT policy. I was like, never thought about, things like that you never think of. And actually, it's really funny because it's like, how am I going to develop an IT policy? And it's just like, that was one of the magic moments of somebody in the office where I hang out with one of my clients was like, you should go ask ChatGPT for an IT policy for small business. It took 2 minutes. It was amazing. So it's like the little things that you don't think about, setting an IT policy, chasing people for money, which is like, that's not fun part of the job. So it's like, it's the regular work and I'm busy. I have a bunch of clients and do some really cool, fun things for them, but also like that a lot of the unknown things, which is part of the adventure. That's what I signed up for, right? I wanted to do something different. So yeah, it's a little bit of a mix of everything.
Well, Ben, congratulations on starting your own firm. It sounds like, this was building up. As you said, you planned for it, finally pulled the trigger. Here you are. Can you talk to us a little bit about the difference that you're noticing between the vision, sort of what you thought starting your own business and running a small business would look like versus what it actually looks like?
Yeah, I mean, the biggest thing is two things. One is the volume of things you have to think about, because you're always like, there's always something else you can be doing. One of the cool parts of my business and the people I've talked to, everybody's got great ideas. And everybody's got like, you should do this, you should do that. And it's like, you have to sort of like the challenge of keeping all the kittens in the box, of trying to like keep it under control and be focused and concentrate. The other part is the challenge of you have to constantly be moving in different directions. You have to constantly be, my first year, I sold a bunch of stuff really early, which was great. And then I frankly had to focus on getting the work done. And then by the time the work was done, I kind of looked around and was like, the pipeline was kind of empty because I hadn't been selling for 5 months. I've been focusing on doing work. So it's like, you have to keep that pipeline You have to find a partner or find some resources or find time to do it yourself. That part of always be selling and always be cultivating the new business is something that I didn't have to do before. Before it was a little bit more a sustaining regular flow, and it was a lot of work, but it was like I didn't have to go out and hunt it. I didn't have to go hunt and cook it at the same time, if that makes sense. So those are the biggest differences, and I knew them going in, but since I'd never done it before, the scale and dimension of it was just different.
Ben, this podcast today is coming in such a great time. We live in an industry where a lot of people are reassessing their jobs in the corporation. In the high tech world, we just experienced massive layoffs in the past 6 months. I'm curious, and I hope you feel like sharing. I'm curious, what triggered you to take the plunge and decide to be an entrepreneur and build your own business?
Yeah, I mean, when I looked through, I had a great career as an agency person, maybe went a few years longer than I should have.
What does that mean?
No, I mean, I was there 28 years, and I probably, if I did it after 20 years, I probably would have had a longer experience doing a brand. The other thing was, had a great brand experience. My job at Mastercard was probably the best job I'll ever have. But the challenge was I'm not wired to do the same thing for too long. I got it, like 5 years is probably a good number for me. And then I just have to discover something new. Doesn't mean I have to leave my company, because I've been at companies for, longer than 5 years, but I have to find a new hook and a new wrinkle. When I was an agency person, it was like a new account or moving from running domestic US business to running global business, some new wrinkle. And at Mastercard, frankly, my boss liked me in the job I was in so much that he didn't want to create new opportunities for me, which is comforting and reassuring. And frankly, most of my friends look at it and be like, why did you leave such a cool, cushy, job? And I left on my own. I left with no big, huge, giant, I didn't get a package to, go home and do something else and things like that. So, but I was bored. I needed to do something and I got to a point where I could, personal things. I'm old enough. My kids are old enough. My life stage. I was at a point where I could go imagine a new adventure from every aspect, from its, everything going on in my life, including, financially, I could do it. Right. So that made it a lot easier to do. I have a lot of, so those kind of factors. I was a little bit bored, had the opportunity to do it, financially. And it was just like time to take the plunge and do something different.
I think that idea, anybody listening, certainly Nadia and I feel seen, I think, right now, because we're also people who are super motivated to do new things, create things that didn't exist before. And anybody choosing to listen to a podcast like this probably is more like you, Ben, as well. And I am interested in unpacking, if we can, that moment of boredom or moments of boredom.
Sure.
How did you recognize in yourself that you were bored? And what kind of difference was that making on a job that I'm guessing you're still able to perform it well, and still there's impact on the job to be bored doing it?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I was still, a high performing employee. And again, it was it was a little bit of a double-edged sword of I was, so high performing in my job that my boss wasn't really worried about, he didn't want to move me out to, didn't want to move me into another spot. So, I mean, it doesn't flip a switch. It's not a moment. It kind of happens over time. And I think one of the biggest things is you being conscious of your own situation. The biggest thing is the most important brand that we're ever going to manage, the most important challenge that we're ever going to manage is our own path, right? And it sounds like, I don't mean to sound too too warm and fuzzy, but it's like if you don't pay attention to what you're doing and the journey that you're on, no one's going to do it for you. So you have to kind of I got schooled. Somebody kind of got me into, and I don't spend an excessive amount of time thinking about it and managing it, but I spend enough time to know that it's just it was just, I don't think my performance suffered, but my own mental capacity, my own mental energy definitely suffered. I had so many friends, including, friends, my wife, who were just you're just not excited to go into the office anymore. I would sit in the parking lot of the company and look at the front door and be like, do I really have to walk in there today? Because it was just the same things and it wasn't interesting or exciting. And so many people in the last, probably the 6-month run up to me finally pulling the plug and leaving, were like, so many people said, I can tell the excitement level that you have talking about your new adventure is just a different level than than your other adventure. So it doesn't happen. It's not flipping a switch. You have to kind of be cognizant of what you're doing and how you're feeling about work and what you feel like your contributions have been. Hopefully that's answering your question, Jeff.
I really love how you described this kind of journey, and you seem a very motivated person, someone that gives 100% in everything they do, and people around you were like observing you and saying, hey, like this excitement. When you go up, you said two sentences that I wanted to dwell on. One is the fact that you need to own your path and the journey that you're on, because otherwise no one is going to do it for you. And this is a big trend that we hear on this show. And then the other one in really clicking, and you said it's not built in a day, like you need to take time. So I'm wondering, if you go back to the moment that you said, okay, I'm going to start investing in doing my own thing.
Mm-hmm.
And you said you did it for a couple of years.
Yep.
So how was that process in envisioning what you wanted for yourself and building in it and actually doing it? Like, how was it? And when did you decide to say, okay, I'm plunging?
Well, the moment when I decided to do it, there was a moment. I mean, there was a physical moment when I turned to, when I hit a certain age and a certain number of years, there was like a magic date that sort of got set for me of when I could leave, because I got to technically retire and all the benefits and stuff like that. So that part of it was a little bit easy. I planned it probably 18 months, 2 years ahead of time. And it really was, I gave a lot of thought to looking at the market, looking at my experience, and seeing where there were holes in the market. I think my business today, I've had multiple people tell me, geez, no one is really, there's a ton of media consultants out there. But I'm trying to be very specific, both about the subjects that I will work on and also my engagement model. A lot of people have heard the term fractional chief marketing officer. If somebody will come in and help people, to basically fill a gap when someone's on leave or someone left the company. The thought of a fractional chief media officer, of always kind of being around for, not for the big, huge giant, the biggest spenders in the world, but that like medium path where it's enough money that people have to care, but not enough money that they went and spent a lot of money to hire me full time. That kind of path, and going to people and saying, I'm always going to be around to help you. I can spend a consistent amount of time with you on an ongoing basis, and we can help solve your problems, because you don't even know your problems are going to be 3 months from now. So my engagement model of being that fractional chief media officer, it makes me unique. I don't know of anybody else out doing things like that. And I'm also pretty specific about the places where I'm trying to help. Either it's brands or media owners or agencies, and they all need help. And I all have slightly different products based upon which one of those segments I'm talking to.
I think hearing you speak about what your niche is, that fractional CMO, is so interesting. And connecting it back to the beginning when you mentioned that period where sales was not in focus, then it needs to be in focus. And it's making me think about my husband, who runs his own small business, and he has a couple of people that work with him. And the hardest part for him is that sales piece as well, that it requires that constant nurturing. And I'm wondering if you have any tips, advice for people running small, medium businesses. And maybe to start, do you like that sales piece of it? Is that something that you personally get enjoyment from?
I like talking to people. I love talking to people. I love talking to them about how I can solve their problems. And I've got a lot of experience. Probably, there are probably very few people, not to make myself sound like I'm that unique, but with the depth of experience of both agency side, brand side, global roles, domestic roles, I spent a year and a half doing domestic media in China. That was my last agency gig. So I've got like a really wide experience that's kind of unique. When I'm really talking to people about solving their problems, I love it.
Mm-hmm.
When I have to, and that doesn't happen obviously 100% of the time, when I'm chasing people who really aren't prospects, although I didn't realize it yet, and going through that pattern is like, no, I don't know if anybody enjoys that, right? But it's just like, once I finally hook onto somebody who really needs the help and they're engaged, they understand it. One of my biggest challenges is you have a depth of people. My audience is people who don't know what they don't know. And that's really important, right? I've talked to a lot of people who should be great prospects, but they don't see the value. They see like, well, I know enough about media to get by, and that's, and that's okay. When today, the biggest challenge of the media landscape, the world in which we live in, is so complicated and so confusing. And I get people all the time who don't understand. If you don't understand the opportunity that you're missing, it's hard to get people over that edge. So people who are engaged and know I can help them, I can talk about it all day long. I can, really get into the weeds about how I can help them and the value I can create for them. People that don't get it, it's frustrating. So it's like, and one of the biggest things, I had a couple tips that people gave me. And the first one is, and I'm generally a pretty, open, friendly guy. I like to help people. I'm a nerd about the media industry. I'm constantly trying to help people. One of the biggest things was, don't give stuff away for free. Don't give your time away for free, because you can't. You're in the business of, I have so many friends in year one who are like, can you just help me on a project? Oh, of course I can. I'm happy to help you. And it's, it takes away from my overall business. The other part is knowing when to cut bait. Like, I've got people who I've written 5, 6, 7 proposals, and they say they're interested, but it's like, after 5 or 6 proposals, they may want to be interested, but in my business, I got to cut bait and move on to somebody who's going to sign a contract, because, time's money. So it's like, being a good gauge of who's serious and who's not serious is a really good tip, which just happens over time. And the other is like, don't give things away for free. You have to sell, and you have to show people what you're going to do for them, but you can't give work away for free. So that was 2 pieces. One piece of advice I got, and one I kind of learned, of like, know when to cut bait. When you do that 5th, 6th, 7th proposal revision, they might not really be interested, and they're just trying to suck more free work out of you.
You are touching a topic that for many people that are creators or coaches or mentors or consultants, designers, the topic of asking for money is a very deep and polarizing one. Mm-hmm. Because on one side, especially those of us like you that like to help others, we would see someone that we could really change their life, or, with 1 hour of our time. And then we are like embarrassed almost to ask for the money, because maybe they don't have it. Or, personally, I found myself in this situation all the time. I met someone on Monday that they asked me for consulting, and I was like, oh my God, what do I do? I don't feel that I want to charge for my time. How do you do it, right? Because I get it, like, don't give your time for free. How in practice do you outsource this to someone else, the money element?
I ask for, again, I'm pretty confident in my abilities and my background, and I am not there. If you're just looking, depending upon the range of media consultants, I have kind of learned that there's a lot of people out there in our business today, especially given, Jeff, some of the dynamics that you talked about in terms of, a lot of companies and a lot of people. I am not, I am not at the inexpensive end of the spectrum, right? So I'm pretty confident in what I do. I can prove value. And I think it happened, Nadia, it happened more over time. My first year, if I had a little bit of a hole in the schedule and somebody called me and said, can you help me? And, I would do it. Right. And I did a project last year in year one. There was some potential there, but it started out being a $2,000 project, which for me is the smallest project I did. Right. And I did the work. they didn't use it the way they should have, and then B, they didn't pay me. So it's just like I did it first year and kind of got into those moments of like, especially as you build up. If you're so busy, I have one client now, which we're kind of struggling to figure out the right model of payments. If I've got people who want to pay me monthly retainers, and what am I asking asking rate card is, things like that. I gotta focus and prioritize those guys. So it happens more for me. It happened more for experience. I'm flexible and agile. I'm not, my rate card is not etched on a stone tablet, and I'm willing to, if it's a partner who I want to work with, I'm more flexible and agile. But I'm not shy about asking for money, and I'm worth it, and I can prove, ROI, and I'm willing to guarantee the ROI for people. But I'm not shy about asking for money nowadays. And but it took practice. It took me a year of and again, the biggest hassles I've had were for the smallest ones. A little, $2,000 project. A, they ignored me, and B, they didn't pay me. It's just like, what are you guys doing? So you learn it over time. It happens over time.
You use that word prioritize, which is a lot of what you're describing over the whole conversation, like ruthless prioritization on the things that are going to be worth your time. You've got a team who you're dividing that list of priorities amongst. But we are the 99 Humans podcast, so I want to expand that idea of prioritization, especially for you who left sort of the corporate world intentionally to build your own business, which is now more integrated into your life, I'd imagine, than your old corporate job. How do you think about that integration? Because this kind of business could eat your whole life.
Oh, 100%.
Your hours, round the clock. Are there lines that you're drawing? What are the agreements that you're creating with family members? How do you integrate this and create a rich whole life?
It's an amazing question, because I had twofold. So first of all, one of the rubrics of how I prioritize is, are they people I want to work with? I've got a couple clients who I signed on with, and they're just not fun. And it's just like, and when it's just like, I shouldn't have taken this work, but I did. It's like, so one of the rubrics is like, it has to be people who I'm going to have fun with. We're going to do great stuff, but we're going to have fun. We're going to be like-minded. But to get back to the integration, it's a great question. I sat with, in my journey, in my preparation, I sat with a serial entrepreneur, and we talked about some of the things I do. And I have a wife and two daughters, and I have I have hobbies and things like that. And they said, one of the things I do, one of the examples she pointed out was, I'm trying to train, tomorrow's media leaders. And I teach for the last probably 5 or 6 years, I've taught a class in media planning and buying at Temple University in Philadelphia, which is where I went to school. And it's my way of giving back, one of my ways of giving back. But she was talking to me about you only get paid $4,000 a semester to do that work. And that's blah, 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 number of dollars per hour. And you don't want to do that, because it's you could be out selling, $10,000 a month monthly retainers and things like that. So I've been pretty good about not letting it consume me. It's very easy to consume you. I still do the things that I like to do. I still, keep my hobbies. I don't think I've really changed my life, but you're right. It takes work. It takes energy to kind of draw that line as to what's gonna suffer. And I think that I've worked hard at not making a lot of that stuff suffer. I mean, again, with my family, I worked crazy hours anyway. So it's that wasn't really a delta change. But yeah, my activities and things like that, I still, hang out with my friends. I haven't let this swallow up everything that I do, which is really easy to do. I've been pretty disciplined at not letting that happen, but that just gets into, another part of the priority of you still want to have a life and hang out with your friends and, my wife, and my daughters, and, watch games with my friends and do the things that I want to do. I've been pretty good about not radically changing that.
I have to say that from listening to you, Ben, you do sound like a very disciplined person with a lot of guardrails and a lot of principles and values. And for the people that are listening, I wonder, what are the tactics, right? Because I hear you saying, oh, I was working crazy hours anyways, but I have my hobbies. if people are anything like me or Jeff, I am constantly thinking about my gigs and my project, and I'm there in the shower and I get an idea and I run and I write it. So how do you tactically protect your mental space so that you are not burned out and you have that healthy lifestyle?
Yeah, I think the biggest one is discipline around being organized. It's like knowing that you've got these things in the pipeline and knowing that, scheduling. And I'm not saying, put a half an hour in your calendar to put your kids to bed. It's not that rigorous, but it's just like being organized and disciplined. Everything I do is like in a little notebook, and, I'm, planned out and everything like that. I write outlines before I do any presentation. I'm like one of those people who's really disciplined and rigorous around being organized. So I think part of it, the biggest part, has to do with being organized and knowing what you're doing and knowing and keeping track in front of you of all the things that you've got to have going on. That's probably the biggest one. I mean, obviously you have to be, you have to have the ability to be flexible and nimble. You have to be able to pivot and make changes and things like that. I think the other one is you have to be able to, I'm really good at being able to make decisions. And there's so many people who are like worried about every decision they're making being the right decision. One of the things that I think I'm a pretty good quick decision maker. Are all my decisions right 100% of the time? Of course not. No one can say that. But being okay with, like, you don't make bad decisions on the really big important things. And I sat in a meeting once where I was an agency person. One of our clients came in, the CEO, one of our clients came into the room, and he said, "You people are not doing your jobs." Literally the first thing he said. It's like, oh gosh, one of these guys. And he said, "How do I know that? Because not enough people complain about you." And it's like, think about it for a second. But it's like, if you're not pushing the ball far enough, if you're not failing, like if you don't have, I used to tell my team at Mastercard, the people who helped regionally run media, I had one exercise at the end of the year of like, tell me the biggest failure you had over the year. It's really hard for people, but it's like, there's a context of like, if you're not failing, you're not pushing the envelope hard enough. I used to have conversations with people. We used to have again, everything I do has, I'm pretty organized. It's all mapped out. I've got plans in place. I've got measures in place. And we used to have a red, amber, green, measurement scale at the end of the year. And one of my stakeholders went and complained about like, well, I only had 7 out of 10 were green and the rest were like yellow or red. And I wanted all 10 to be green. I said, if all 10 were green, then you're not stretching far enough. It's like, knowing how to, like, it's okay. And almost like, if you can't sit there and say, I failed at something this year, then you're not trying hard enough. You're not pushing the envelope, especially in today's day and age. Like, failure is okay. It's fine as long as like as long as you don't, fail 80% of the time. I had one client when I was an agency person, and in their lobby, they had one wall was all their great accomplishments and their great innovation, and one wall was all the company's failures. And what do you guys think was in common between the two walls? Any ideas?
Same size?
Same people.
Oh, yeah.
Same people. I mean, all the stories, Walt Disney failed so many times, but it's just like nobody bats 1,000. Again, you want to succeed more than you fail. I'm not encouraging people to do wild, crazy things that fail all the time, but it's like failure is okay. And, getting people to like motivating, inspiring your people to like push a little bit to be able to know when they're pushing boundaries is really important.
I love that. I wrote it down, start it. I want to have a biggest fail of the year contest now with my own team.
But as long as you're learning from it, it's okay.
100%. And what I found to be interesting is while I feel like I live that and radiate that spirit, the tactics of how do you really cultivate a culture of being okay with failure, celebrating failure, all the cliches. Yep. This is a real tactic that's helping.
Really hard.
That I
really
love.
Hard. And the first time you do it, but it's just like, and again, I'll credit the CEO of my client who walked in the room and said, "I know you're not pushing hard enough because not enough people complain about you." Mm-hmm. If nobody sits there and says, "Gosh, I wish Nadia or Jeff, I wish they didn't push me on this or this or this. If no one has any complaints about any of our work, then you could argue that we're not pushing hard enough and we're in our little cocoon of just like keeping the trains running and things like that, which is okay, but it's not, ultimately it probably leads more to boredom and, lack of motivation than anything else does.
There's so many directions that I would love to expand this conversation with you, Ben, because when you say you're not pushing hard enough, it almost connects to what you said before about the confidence. It seems to me that a lot of the enablers for these behaviors are tied to the concept of confidence, especially as a leader.
100%.
Right? So what is your observation for the relationship between failure and confidence?
No, I mean, it's a great observation. I think that you have to be inherently, you have to be confident enough in your ability or your team's ability to be able to stretch those boundaries. And a lot of it has to do with teams. I mean, letting people stretch far enough to like knowing that like tipping point. I would like to think if people ask me my management philosophy, it's like I give people, just enough leash, just enough room to like do an amazing job. And I'm like there to protect them. If they fail, I'm there. I have their back. And I've been accused so many times of like coddling my people and, not letting them, getting jams and things like that. It's like, I think it has to do with, you do have to be confident in, you do have to have a lot of confidence to be able to deal with, I'm going to push boundaries. I'm going to potentially fail. I'm going to, generate new ideas and things like that. So those two are, very, very connected and very related. I will say there's a very fine line, right? I mean, one of the other, to go with confidence, I think one of the corollaries to that is knowing what you don't know and being humble enough to know that, like, I don't know everything. There's some things I'm really, really good at, and I know it like the back of my hand. I don't profess to know everything. And knowing and being honest with yourself and having a good gauge of what you're good at and what you're not good at is really, really important. But you're right. You have to be confident to be able to keep pushing forward and things like that.
I'm glad you added that because it feels like if you were just a confident person, why would you ever experiment? You already have all the answers. But if you're confident in your humility that you don't know everything, then gosh, the world is your oyster and let's go out there and find. Is there a time that you can think of where, that thin line that you mentioned was crossed in terms of either your own confidence or your own humility that we're actually getting in the way of the amazing? Because it's a challenge. Just like you described, it takes work to protect my personal life. It takes work to protect this experimentation culture piece of a team.
Yeah, and there's one example that jumps to mind, and I won't. So I have a team when I was at Mastercard. Have a team of regional heads of media who reported, dotted line reported into me, and then our agencies. And we had a whole bunch of people. There was one specific way that we did things, and I was completely confident that we were doing it the right way. And I won't get into the technical weeds. And a small group came to me and said, we think we're doing it wrong. We think we should pivot from this way to this way. And I was like, it's like my ability to have an open mind and literally like every single person in the room. We had a big conference. We were in Warsaw at a big conference in a conference room, and every single person, 20 people were like, this is the way we should go. And it's the way that I didn't want to go. So me sitting there saying, I have the confidence. I know we did it the right way. But 20 people are sitting there telling me we should do it this way. Having the confidence and know how important it is for the team to be like, okay, cool, we'll do it your way is, it's not easy, right? Because if I sit there and said, I know the difference, the funny sidebar is 6 months from that, 6 months later, they all came back to me and said like, you were right. And I was like, I didn't play I told you so. That's the other thing. It's just like, not playing I told you so. It's like, and my group was all waiting for me to like, come down on them. It's just like, nope, we learned. It was it was like valuable learning. We pushed the envelope. We tried new things and it's okay. But it's like it's hard, right? When you know something's right and your team wants to go down a different boundary, as long as you're not doing something crazy, it's part of growing and, cultivating a team.
Well,
But that was my one example, was like when 20 people told me I was wrong, I was like, okay, we'll do it your way. And it's not just a great story because 6 months later they came back. But it was like, it's just 20 people telling you you're doing it wrong. You have to kind of go with the flow a little bit.
what comes to mind with this story, Ben, is understanding when the risk is manageable enough so that you can let it go. Because I believe from this half an hour that I've met you today, that if the risk would have been too extreme or big enough, etc., you would have probably, been very stubborn and say, we're doing my way.
Oh, 100%.
So, you know what I mean?
100%. Yeah, I mean, understanding the situation. One of the other, part of being able to make good decisions is being able to understand situations really quick, right? So getting a really quick read on a situation and establishing a point of view and understanding everything, all the risks and all the decision makers and all the different points of view, understanding a situation and being able to put a plan in place and knowing the risks and opportunities is super important. And some people, again, I think a gift of a trait of a good leader, one of the traits of a good leader is their ability to understand a situation really fast and be able to get people moving in a direction really, really quick. But you're absolutely right. No, if it had huge, giant business risk, I would have said, like, nope, we're not doing it. Frankly, it wouldn't have gotten, in that case, it wouldn't have gotten to a conversation with 20 people. I wouldn't have let those guys have let's have a group discussion about it. It would have been like, no, I'm drawing privilege, and here's the reasons why we're not doing it. I wouldn't have let those guys, again, it gets to like leadership and managing a culture of people. I wouldn't have let them get to a stage where I let them do all this work and got excited about a solution that I knew had huge risk. I would have never done that. I would have just said, we're doing it. This is what we're doing.
Because that's also an act of kindness. I believe that a kind leader would see the situation, and if it's too extreme, is going to save the day.
Can't waste people's time. You can't let people on false journeys and have false hope. I mean, again, I think I'm pretty good at, and one of the things the biggest thing I miss about working in a big corporate environment is my teams and the ability to like lead people, because I love leading. I love working in big teams of people. And now I work with clients and I have, multiple people, but it's like the biggest thing about growing, cultivating, and developing, a team is that's probably the biggest gap. And that's the one thing I probably, if you ask me what I miss most, that's probably the biggest thing. But
that would have been my question, Ben. I would have asked, what do you miss the most? There you go.
Leading a team. Yeah, leading my team. And we developed the culture. And it's not just me. It's like people have to be willing to work in the culture. One of the coolest things that I was given the opportunity to do was I worked through my accidentally picking up doing some global responsibilities. Somebody made me count one year. I actually worked in 64 countries. But like working with different people and different cultures, and just it forces you to get into an environment of like people think differently. Me working in China for a year and a half, and where I knew about maybe 20 words of Mandarin, and still being able to like lead people and teach people how to storytell and put together great presentations and things like that. That was awesome. That was the most fun part of my job. Yeah.
What's the most fun part of your job now?
Meeting different people and helping people solve problems. Meeting a bunch of different people, because today the depth of the number of people that I get to see now is much wider than I did before, because I had a fixed group. I had my team, I had my boss, I had the Mastercard organization. It was a fixed group of people, and it was still challenging. But now I get to meet so many more people and have so many other exchanges.
I love that. Man, I think we could chat all day with you. But I'd love to end with our typical question on 99 Humans, which is to ask you for, what piece of advice do you want to leave people with when you reflect back on the conversation that we've had today? Maybe what's the one nugget that you want folks to really digest and understand?
Yeah, I mean, keeping an understanding and a plan of your own destiny, of like, your own brand is the most important brand the most important piece of work that you're ever going to do. And you have to be the kind of person that you want to be. You have to do the kind of work that you want to do. You have to be, be the kind of person you have to be both personally and like as a group. I mean, my teams, generally speaking, not every single person, but my teams, if I look back when I was an agency person or at Mastercard, they went through walls for me. And it's like, the ability to be able to build that, but being conscious of your own brand and what it takes to be the kind of person that you want to be is not an accident. It doesn't happen. You can't plot it out. You have to be nimble and agile because things change. But the thoughtfulness about focusing on, you have to plan that out, is really important. And I learned that through one experience. The one time I've been out of work, the one time I was, I worked for an agency and they lost 60% of their clients in like 3 months. So they had to let people go. The one time I was out, I really forced myself to be like, what is my brand about? What am I doing? And it really helped me focus, which carried me through, the rest. And that was pretty early in my career, probably 15 years in. So it was, focus on that, like focus on your own brand and be the kind of person that you want to be.
Ben, when is your book getting into the stores? I hope you're writing one. There's
No,
so
it's
much
funny you mention
wisdom.
that. I enjoy teaching. Like that's my thing. I enjoy sitting in a classroom with 15 people. Like last year, I taught 2 semesters. One was a master's level class, and to get a couple people after the class who'd never taken a media class before and be like, I never knew about media before, but after taking this class, I think I'm gonna want to make a career out of it. That's fun for me. I mean, my boss just wrote a book. My ex-boss at Mastercard wrote a very well sold book, and he told me you should write a book. It's like that the book part motivates me less than the teaching part. I like to get in, like teaching is more one-to-one. I get to interact with people. I'll teach more. I'll never stop teaching, probably more than I will write a book. But thank you.
I'm glad that we got you today with at least part of the wisdom that we can diffuse in the world from you. That's been so great.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks. Where can people find you if they want to connect? Maybe potential partnerships for your consulting business now. Where can they find you?
Yeah, so my website, modernmediasolutions.org, or you can email me at ben@modernmediasolutions.org.
Fantastic. We'll put that in the show notes for sure, so you can find it there.
Thanks, Jeff. Nadia.
Thank you for carving out time and being with us today. What a great conversation. We covered a huge range of topics.
I know. This is great. I appreciate you guys having me. Look forward to hearing the product. And thank you guys so much, and have a great weekend.
Absolutely. Same. We'll send everything your way. Thank you,
Perfect.
Ben. Wishing you a great weekend.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Bye, Ben.
Bye. What a great conversation.
Such an interesting from, agency world. I even at the end, we learned something new about, being laid off and using that moment to build a brand, to going and working for many years in a leadership position across a number of countries, and then starting his own consulting business. The leadership journey is just really different across all of that spectrum.
I really appreciated when he said it was early in my career, 15 years in. And that clicked on me because I'm exactly, a little bit more. I think I am at around 18 years in. I was like, wow, it's still early in my career.
Yeah. There's one of my personal just kind of mentors and friends. When I hit 5 years working at Google, I went to him and said, I'm panicked. I need to move on. It's been too long. Almost, and even Ben said, at 5 years, I kind of get bored. I think I was feeling that. And he goes, it's really early. This is not a long time yet. I'm like, okay, but it's good to get that perspective sometimes, to zoom out, because you're always in your own moment. But to really hear someone who has a little bit more of that perspective is helpful. So Nadia, what are you taking away from that conversation?
I'm sure you know that I really love these conversations because they span from so many areas, and there were many moments that I underlined and I clicked, and this is probably one of my top 3 episodes that we've recorded until today. And when you asked him about his advice, I thought he would have said something else.
Mm.
And when he actually said what he said, that is my biggest one that I loved. Because when he said, well, your brand is the most important thing that you have, and even he said the brand of your group, like what your people stand for as a leader, that also is carried through your own brand. And I really love, because, well, for me, it was a validation of a personal journey that I've started 2 years ago, of really asking myself, what do I stand for? What are my mission? Like, when people see the team working with me and for me, what do they say? So this whole concept around a human person also being a brand, it's something that I'm very passionate. And I'm going to close by saying that when he said it's not by accident.
Yeah.
So I really love that. It's like, you got to be intentional about what you stand for.
Time and time and time again, I think we're going to have 99 episodes with that lesson in it, because the best human leaders are being intentional about cultivating the things that they're good at, moving in directions that they want to move in, instead of just letting life happen to them, which frankly works to a large degree, but there's always a ceiling. And it's the ones who break through the ceiling, and it's the intention to break through the ceiling. Nobody is just carried by the winds to the kinds of leadership opportunities that the people we're talking to get to. So I love that one as well. I'm going to give a totally different take, even than I usually do, because there's often amazing, lessons and all that. And I'll just take a tactic. Having a biggest fail of the year competition is a fabulous idea that I think could be so cool for my own team, so cool for any version of teams that I've led in the past or in the future. It does so many things that I want to do with my team to really encourage that spirit of innovation. And I love the idea of celebrating that. Don't give me a fake fail that really was a success, but I want to celebrate the actual fails that did not work. That is such a cool idea. So I'm taking that tactic away, and I'm 100% 6 months from now, Nadia, you're going to see me running this with my team.
I think we should do both of our teams together, because I loved it too. And I'm going to take it even further. I'm going to start doing it with my own children and saying, hey, kids, what has been the failure of the week? And maybe I should start doing it with myself as a Virgo type A perfectionist. I should probably think about managing my failures a little bit more intentionally.
Could be a whole new journal category at the end of the night or something. I'm thinking a whole world here of, do you even know, right? Are we aware enough of the risks that we're taking and how they're panning out? All part of that intention. I love it.
I love it. Well, everybody, thank you for being with us today as well. Give us a listen. Give us 5 stars if you loves us. Do subscribe to our episodes. Follow us on LinkedIn, on Instagram. We're now everywhere. And we hope that you will continue to listen to 99 Humans.
All right. Until next time.
Bye, Jeff.
Bye.